Hey there, how you doing? It's a gorgeous Sunday afternoon here in New Hampshire, almost 50 degrees. So I wanted to sit down and do a video because I haven't done one in a long time, and I've had a couple false starts with this channel, so I want to try and get things going. I'm not going to jump into anything too complicated today, but there's been one topic that comes up often in my line of work, and that is, how do I become a space lawyer? Now, I get this question from both practicing attorneys who have gone past the bar and are actually in practice now, or law students. They typically come to me and they ask me, well, I want to be a space lawyer. What should I study? So this is going to be a quick video, but I'm going to break down a couple things. I'm going to start with law students and then go over to general practitioners and just kind of give you some advice on what you should be doing and what you should be looking at. I want to give a blanket disclaimer that you're not going to be, there's no such thing as a pure space lawyer. In other words, you're not going to just be focusing on things that go on in outer space. You're going to be, because a lot of what's happening in outer space really relates a lot to what's happening on the ground as well. So I think my best advice to you is, you know what, you've got to be a lawyer first and then delve into space law, which means you got to have the skill, you got to have the analytical skills. It's good to have litigation skills. It's good to have all the other general skills that are a lawyer. Legal research and writing is a big one. So that's just one of the caveats I want to come up with. And actually this stemmed from a discussion I had about 3 years ago with some other colleagues when we were all having dinner in Michigan. We talked about this very issue, and we all kind of agreed that there is no such thing as a pure space lawyer, and it's kind of deceptive to tell somebody, oh, you're going to go into this area and you're going to litigate, areas in space and Star Wars and all this area. That's kind of a false narrative, and I think one of the things I want to make clear out of this video is that this is not a pure thing. Just like the law, there's no pure area of law that you focus on, because other areas kind of bleed into it. So let me get started with law students. Now, right now, a lot of you are probably starting your second semester of law school, whatever year you're in. And I just want to tell you, and I'm going to kind of break this down by years, what you should be focusing on. 1Ls, if you're first year of law school, right now your schedule, your agenda has pretty much been made up by your school. They're telling you what courses you're going to take. So my advice is think less about space and focus more on your studies right now, because getting through your first year is tough, and you're going to need all your focus on your studies to lay the foundation for your second and third year. I will emphasize, though, legal research and writing. That is a huge skill. The ability to research, analyze, and legally write is very important, especially in this area we call space law right now, because it is a growing area, and a lot of new topics are coming up, new issues are coming up. You got to be able to analyze them. In other words, find out what the issues are, do the research both at the international level and the domestic level, and I'll talk about this a little bit later in the video, and then be able to write a coherent argument. It isn't all about getting up in front of the judge. Sometimes it's a matter of getting a motion or a legal argument that's written down in front of the judge. So for 1Ls in particular, I want to emphasize that you should be focusing on legal research and writing, of course, amongst all your other foundational courses like property, torts, contract law, and such, because believe it or not, those are all going to come into play if you're going to get into this area we call space law. 2Ls, now you're probably in your second year of your second semester, and your second semester of your second year, and right now you have a little bit more freedom about what courses you've chosen, and your agendas are probably already figured out. But I encourage you on your third year, if you haven't already done so, international law is a good course if your school offers it to study in, because really the beginnings of space law is international law, and you're going to need to understand that. But also focus on things like if your school offers a course in legislation. I would definitely take that, because legislation is becoming very important right now at the domestic level. And believe it or not, most new space law is actually being generated at the domestic level as opposed to the international level in the UN and through multilateral agreements. So that's an area you might want to focus on as well. And of course, your other ones, you're probably going to involve in evidence right now, con law. Understanding the Constitution is an important thing right now, because the Constitution is kind of ties into how treaties are interpreted, and you're going to want to understand not only to pass your exam and graduate and become a 3L, but also to understand how the Constitution, in our case, treats treaties and international law in general. And when I'm giving this, I know I'm throwing this out here right now, the Constitution and stuff, so I'm focusing a lot on American law students as opposed to students from other states, and when I say states, other nations. But I would definitely focus, for those in the U.S., I would focus on constitutional law and those other courses, other electives you might have taken. Third year is another opportunity to take courses like international law and, any course, any litigation classes like appellate advocacy is a very good one to take because it'll challenge your writing skills. And I say this because right now, we haven't seen a lot of action in the federal courts right now, but I think that's going to change in the very near future, where we'll see some of these space law issues or new space law issues actually being litigated in domestic federal courts. So it's important to understand that. Federal Rules of Civil Procedure is a big one. Make sure you understand that as well. And for students from other states and other jurisdictions, make sure you understand how your legal system works through the courts, through writing, through research and such, because it's equally important to you as it is to students here in the U.S. Third-year students should also be focusing on the fact that you got to graduate. This is probably your last semester. You graduate, and then you got to get ready for the bar. So, aspiring to get into space law is a great thing, but at the same time, you got to be thinking about where am I going to take the bar, and I should be thinking about filling out your application for the bar exam. And once you get out of law school, once you graduate in May or June, whichever it is, you are going to have to prepare for the bar. And that is a 100%. You have to give it your all. Never mind space law. Focus on that. And I'm going to give a caveat, and especially to 1Ls as you're going out. I want you should also consider getting, having some sort of internship during the summer, or if it's an externship, if possible, to actually get some experience in a law firm that does litigation. And actually another course you guys want to focus on is environmental law, because there are some issues in there too. So if you can get some actual experience with environmental law, litigation, contracts, or even international law in the real sense, that's really good, because law school is great, but it doesn't really teach you how to be a lawyer. And actually getting out there in the practical world and doing it is some great experience. But even if you don't get paid for it, the experience is awesome. So that's my quick and dirty advice for law students. Now, for those who have passed the bar, congratulations. Or those who have been practicing law, you've been in the game, probably been in the game long enough. You know how it goes, and you've probably been out there practicing law, in the courts, or doing transactional law, or maybe you've been in environmental law. But you want to get into this new area called space law. And I want to tell you, and what I want to tell you about this is, you're really not going to say, well, I'm just going to dump the rest of my practice and go into space law, because I think you're going to find in some cases you're going to be able to merge your practice into space law. For example, if you're into intellectual property, well, there's a lot of IP law that deals with outer space. In fact, there's a statute in the U.S. Code that deals with it. I can't remember that off the top of my head, but if you do a quick search of the U.S. Code for intellectual property and outer space, it'll come up with this statute that relates directly to it. Like I said, if you're an environmental lawyer, there are issues, right? In fact, there's one issue right now in environmental law that is pretty hot, dealing with the Starlink satellites and such. And there's a big debate about whether certain areas of law apply. That's another area. So what I'm saying for practitioners is, you're not going to drop the rest of your practice and just become a pure space lawyer. You're going to incorporate, if you want, you can incorporate space law into your practice. And I say this because a lot of it is, some people, when they think of space law, they think of international conventions, treaties, agreements, executive agreements, whatever. But that isn't entirely the case, because, as I mentioned earlier, domestic law is becoming more prevalent in this. So bottom line is, I think you're going to see in the future, probably within the next couple of years, you're going to actually see some litigation relating to space that are going to implicate space law. And so you're going to have litigation skills, and those are going to come into play. If you're into contracts are huge in this area. Commercial space activity is all about contracts, especially if you deal with government contracts. That's important too. Like I mentioned, intellectual property, environmental law before. Another area that's coming up is potentially property law. We have this space resource law in the book, and that's going to become a very hot issue this year at the UN, about whether this idea of space resources is going to be internationally accepted, and that's going to really kind of spin into a new area of property rights. So if you deal with real property issues, this is something you might consider looking into, and putting your name out there and saying, hey, this is what I do and I'd like, hire me to help you, and you can get this will be for private companies. Contracts, like one of the contracts before, obviously because of commercial space companies. But I guess my overall gist for both law students and current practitioners is there's no such thing as a pure space lawyer. A space lawyer, people who deal in space law, actually bring different aspects of different fields of the legal discipline into space law, like contracts, property law, torts is going to be one of them, intellectual property, environmental law, and of course international law is out there, and it kind of interplays with domestic law as well. I think the best advice I could give you is for a law student, or basically for a new lawyer, is and this came from a former general counsel who he was one of the members of the discussion, and basically his advice was become the best, meanest litigator you can. So in other words, develop those litigation skills to go out there and do it, or at least have a good knowledge of how the court system works, and to be able to set up a motion or a brief and argue a point of space law, or that may come up in the course of a matter. And of course, there are a lot of areas, the area of space law that, like I said, is starting to come into the point where it's going to be affected by the courts. And I think I'll save that for another video, because there are a few cases out there that actually, give some hints of what direction this might take. But anyways, those are my tips, and they're very general tips, and kind of more a consideration for those people that want to get into space law. I know I'm not trying to discourage you, and unfortunately a lot of people I've talked to have been discouraged by what I've said because they've had some false impressions. So the purpose of this video, I hope, is kind of erase some of those false impressions and bring a little bit of reality into this, because ultimately law is a very pragmatic area. Granted, we can have our principles and our ideals, but when it comes down to it, the law is a tool, and how we apply the law, we basically use those principles on how we apply the law. And I want you to come into a real world perspective of what this is all about. In the meantime, obviously keep up with what's going in outer space. Space News is a great medium for that. The Space Review is a weekly publication that is very good on, people actually write. And actually, if you want to become more, how can you say, recognized in the outer space area, the Space Review basically has an open policy. You can submit a publication, and they will publish it for you, and you can get your name out there. And yeah, you may be wrong sometimes, but I encourage you, if you want to get your name out there, this is one way of doing it, aside from doing the whole published peer-reviewed paper route, which is of course another area that you could do. But I wanted to give you a fundamental, pragmatic, this is the real world idea of what space law is about, and hopefully get you on to the right path. Now, have comments, of course, in the bottom. You can make some comments or ask me any questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. And if you would like and subscribe to this channel, I would be really great. And of course, share this video with other people. And I hope to, in the next few months, build this out with more videos and delve into some more serious topics that are going on in the space law arena. Until then, I hope you have a great day. Get out and enjoy the weather, because hey, spring's almost here.